Well, Corvus Belli are releasing Warcrow, and it's just around the corner. And what's really cool is that they just released their new rulebook, and I'm pretty excited. I managed to read through the whole thing, and it's really interesting. So in this video, I just want to have a quick chat about some of the things that I'm pretty excited for. Okay, so in this video, I just want to have a brief look at some of the rules in the new Warcrow game that I think are quite unique to the game and make it unique from other wargaming systems, skirmish battle systems, and why I think they're quite interesting choices in terms of rules and how I think the game's going to play. So the first thing I want to have a quick talk about is their dice system. If anyone's played Aristea or Infinity Defiance, then you might be familiar with their dice system. Basically, you have a number of different colored dice with symbols on them, and you will roll these either as simple rolls by themselves or face-to-face rolls with the opponent. And you just compare symbols, and it allows you to either be successful in the action you're doing, it'll tell you how successful you are, and also allow you to do some special abilities through the symbols that you generate. Previously, they've all been done on D6 dice, and all of the dice have a combination of all three symbols. Well, Warcrow's doing it a little bit differently. They're now making them D8s, and they've now also made the colors refer to whether or not they are offensive or defensive dice. So your offensive dice, which are the red, orange, and yellow die, they all have successes, which are these stars, and they have like the exclamation mark, which is like the specials. None of them have any shields in any of them. So this is kind of a new thing there. Then the defensive dice are the green, the blue, and the black, and they only have shields and the exclamation mark specials. So now they've kind of very, very clearly defined the differences between these two sets of dice to be purely defensive or purely offensive. So that's kind of an interesting change up to the dice system there from Aristea and Infinity Defiance. The other thing as well, they've added some new symbols, which are these hollow symbols. And these are kind of like these empty symbols. And basically, they're a way to make characters a little bit stronger, where they can make use of them. There's also magic use in the game. And so the hollows kind of represent also, when you're rolling magic, the dangers of the magic as well. Because the hollows are very rare to appear on the dice. That's how they kind of work. So it's kind of an interesting thing where they're kind of building up loads of other mechanics around these hollow symbols as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out and play in the game. The other thing I really want to talk about is the turn phase and the turn systems. So you get this big dial, and it has up to 10 turns. But any game that you're playing will have, generally, I think it's going to be like 3 rounds. And each round is going to be built of these turns. But the scenario you play is going to decide how many turns are in a single round. So the examples in the rulebook are pretty much 5-round turns or a 4-round turn. Now what that means in the game is basically it's like 5 activations for your army. So it doesn't matter how big your army or how small your army is. Both players will have the same number of activations. And so the way that works is that you can actually activate any units as many times as you like. The first activation is kind of I would say free activation. It basically, you can activate the unit without any detriment. But if you decide to activate them a second time, they take stress. And stress is kind of like the morale system in Warcrow. So you get a stress token. And there's a number of different things that you can do throughout the game that get you stress tokens. And the more stress tokens you get, if it exceeds your stress maximum for that unit, there's the danger of them breaking, running away, and fleeing, or having other detrimental effects. There's kind of like a risk-reward thing of pushing a unit too hard. This means like in smaller games, if you're doing a smaller number of points or fewer units, you'll definitely be able to activate all of your army. But You may also choose to activate them a little bit extra, try and push them a little harder, or just decide to hold them back and not stress them. So there's kind of a tactical choice there. With larger scale armies, if you have lots and lots of units, you're not going to be able to activate all of them. But there is kind of a thing to help stop any of your units getting completely quagmired into not moving because they just can't activate. But basically at the end of any round, if any units have not activated, they get a free move. So you can still start to maneuver units and things like that, even if you want to focus on other areas of the battlefield. So it's kind of an interesting system because it's not allowing the opponent with the larger army, with a larger number of units, just to out-activate their opponent. This is something that sometimes happens in Malifaux. Certainly when I used to play in 2nd edition, you'd run gremlins because you could out-activate the opponent. That was kind of like their strength. Here, it's kind of stemming that danger of having an army that's going to just out-activate everybody. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. I think it's a pretty cool mechanic. What it also does as well is it means that you could probably guess how long a game's going to take, no matter the size of the army. If you know that there's just going to be 5 activations each, it's very, very even in that sense. You both are playing an equal amount in a turn. You're not waiting for anyone else, really. And it means also that you're moving at a decent clip. So I feel like the game is also going to play pretty fast because of that system. So I'm kind of excited about that. I want to really see if that works, how that is. Now, I mentioned the morale system as well. So you get the stress tokens, and this will increase the stress of a unit. On their unit card, they have a stress limit. And so I think this is kind of also a very cool system as well. There seems to be, from the rules that I can gather, is when there's a combat going on, especially like a close combat, like a melee, what ends up happening is you have a fight and you have to kind of determine who the winner is. Kind of reminds me of old Warhammer fantasy battle type things, where you'd figure out who won, and then you take a morality test or a leadership test to see if your unit runs away or not. There's an element of that in this game, and the importance of this one is that a lot of the missions, a lot of the scenarios are kind of objective holding scenarios. So what you want to do is you want to, like, if you're fighting over an objective, what you want to do is you want to rout your opponent and push them away. And if you can push them away, then you can kind of secure that objective and score the points for the end of that turn, end of that round. So I think it's a very integral part of the game in terms of your tactics on how you play and also how your army plays. At first glances of the starter set, I think you can see that the hegemony of the Embassig, I think that's the name, they seem to have a fairly, I would say, decent power at capturing objectives, because they have kind of like an objective catcher score. So if their unit is there and they're holding the objectives, they'll score so many points that you compare to the opponent that's in the same area, and whoever has the most will capture that objective for that turn. They seem to be pretty good at holding those kinds of things. So they're kind of a castling army in terms of holding objectives. Whereas the orcs, the northern tribes, they have very, very poor values for holding objectives. However, they're quite offensive units, and I think they're all about the momentum of the attack. And the whole idea of them is they rout the enemy so that they can hold the objective. They're not about holding the objective like a castle. They're about just routing the enemy and removing the opponent from the objective. So that's kind of like, on first glance, how I think those two sides are going to be playing. I'd like to kind of explore that a little bit more in another video, where we actually have a look at all of the starter set characters and models and how they're each going to play, or at least how I believe they're going to play. The other thing as well is that all of the models basically come with a character card or a unit card. It gives you all the stats. Now, there's an interesting thing about characters. So there's a number of characters or support units in the game, which are like single model characters. And they can be attached to units. not everyone can, but a number of them can be attached to units. Now, any unit can have one character or one support attached to that unit. And it's really cool how the unit card and the character card will slot together. So the character card on its own has its own stats and its own information of how that model works by itself. However, as soon as it attaches to another unit, its rules drastically change. So rather than using its individual abilities, it will buff the unit instead. So they act as a buffer, and some of their abilities might change from when they were an individual character to where they are a unit character. So it's going to be kind of interesting where you have multiple choices of how you adapt a unit by attaching a character to it. So it gives you a very large number of choices of how you use your characters and how you buff your units, and figuring out for which scenario you're doing what combinations would work best and against what opponents they would work the best. So I'm really interested to see how deep that system could go. I think it could be really good if it's done right. But yeah, that's kind of like all of the main things that I was really interested, and what's really got me excited for Warcrow at the moment. I want to do some more videos. This is just a quick one because I just wanted to get it out there and share it with you. But I really want to go through the major rules of the game and show some examples of how that's going to play and how to play the game. Even though we don't actually have physical copies of the game yet, I still got a good sense of how the game's going to play. So I think I'll be able to show you a little bit of that if you're interested in seeing how the rules of the game work. And as I said, I want to have a go through all of the starter set models and their character information and how I think they're going to play in the game, and maybe some examples of how they'll be used and how they'll support one another. And then hopefully we get a sense of how those two armies play out. But yeah, that's kind of just a quick video I just wanted to put out there with all of you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in Warcrow, please let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you would like to discuss or see in a video about Warcrow, because I'm getting pretty excited about this game. It's looking a lot better than I was initially expecting. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks. Take care. Bye.